So I came back to Australia not really knowing what to do. I was on the trajectory of trying to open my own restaurant. I was trying to think of ways I could sort of get there. A very daunting thought process to like start from scratch, like how am I going to get from this point to the moon basically. I was just reading online about Koji artists. I can't remember, I think I might have bought the guide to fermentation. I was reading about the book, I was like, you know, I've got all this free time, why not sort of dabble and start trying to make my own Koji? You've been instilled from a young age that mold is bad, fermenting is like all these sort of off products is bad. You see this Koji and you smell it and you're like just so amazed by like, wow, I cultivated, I grew this, and it was just like a sort of very rewarding experience. I was fortunate enough to have this sort of clear concept of what I wanted to do. Jason, who we worked together at Pier, obviously, you know, we got chatting and he sort of had this sort of wine bar opportunity that was going to arise. We spoke and he sort of really wanted me to come on and be his sous chef, and like, you know, we got along really well at our time at Pier. You know, we're still really great friends today, and you know, when we were at Pier together, we just got along really well. So for me, I really wanted to sort of, I was excited to sort of see what he was going to bring to this wine bar, because I thought it was a fantastic chef for our time back at Pier when he was a sous chef. I looked up to him quite a lot. And you know, I went to him quite a bit for when I had issues at Pier or when I was struggling. You know, he sort of like looked after me a bit. So I was really excited to go work for him and, you know, sort of see what he could do and like, you know, venture out and start showing, you know, showcasing himself. So I was like, okay, yep. I agreed to the job before the place was open. But, you know, I think there were, like any sort of restaurant opening, there were a lot of setbacks and things that happened. So there was probably about, from the moment we first spoke, there was probably about a year from when it initially happened. I needed work. Can't quite remember the reason behind it. I think maybe I went and did a stage at Marque. And I remember doing my stage there just purely because, you know, I just wanted to sort of see restaurants, you know, while I was waiting for this other place to open. I was just doing a bit of casual work at a place called Ruben Hills, which well, it's still there, but it's just like a little cafe who I had a friend working there, so I was just helping out. And that was great because I was just working the morning shift, and I was, you know, for a chef for my first time in my career, I had nights off, so that was quite a fun experience. So I was working at Marque. So I did my stage at Marque, and I was very upfront with him. I said, listen, you know, I've got this job lined up. You know, I don't really want to work here. I just wanted to sort of see what you guys are about and, like, you know, sort of help out and just sort of that.
Was Brent there at the same time?
No. He's not. And then you know, I did my stage there, really enjoyed it. I thought it was like quite cool. And again, like going back to the Viaggianti conversation, Marque was a very eye-opening experience, just to the way they did things. You know, this is the time after Passy. Passy wasn't there at that stage, but you know, just the way Marque thought about dishes and food, and like, you know, sort of really thought about things outside the box, and that sort of really made you question things. But yeah, just wasn't the right timing, I guess. So I did my stage and then sort of, you know, went back to working at Ruben Hills. Anyway, Marque got in contact with me and he goes, listen, I know that you sort of got this thing lined up, but you know, how do you feel about coming to work with us until you sort of things ready to go?
Oh, wow.
So I went and worked at Marque. I think it was maybe about 10 months from the period I was there. Obviously, when I was there to finish up, Marque was like trying to push me to stay, but I guess I'm a man of my word, I guess, and you know, I promised my friend that I was going to go with him, and you know, in that time I was at Marque, I was still catching up with him and talking about things. So it was always on the back burner to go work there, and I didn't want to really let my friend down. Yeah. So I finished up with my time at Marque after 10 months, and then went and worked with my friend Jason at Gazebo, which is like just a wine bar in Potts Point.
Oh, Gazebo, yeah.
Yeah, listen, man, that went well. It just sort of, I guess, clashed with the owners. They promised one direction of where they wanted to head things, but obviously as soon as things opened, you know, they were all about money, and we had to sort of, you know, I guess, compromise our standards, which is sort of why we parted ways.
To chat.
Yeah.
Like we had this interview with the pastry chef at Benelong, right? And like lovely girl, but it was like she didn't have a lot of overall like experience. It was very hard to like draw out questions or stories, you know. So it's like, but it's just so fucking easy when you have so much to chat about. Like,
yeah, man, like I'm a fine wine, man. A lot of age behind me.
It's good. No, it's great, man. It's just like but it just reminds me of so much of my career where I'm like, fuck, man. Like even the little moments of what you talk about, I'm like, fuck, I haven't felt like that in so long. Like I haven't felt like the intense pressure or anxiety of being that fucked in like a long time. Because after a while, after a couple of years, you're like, I enjoy the stress of like pushing yourself, but like you also want to enjoy cooking. So I think you kind of want to find a balance of it, you know? So you go through it and you're like, okay, that was nice, but I do want to enjoy it. So you kind of find a balance, you know?
Yeah.
But I'm like, fuck, I haven't like put myself in that position in like a long time, you know? But it's so fucking funny. Yeah, I didn't realize you were at, Marque. How was that? I haven't met a lot of chefs who've worked there.
Marque was fantastic. I really enjoyed it. This was the first time ever where I've worked purely in like a tasting menu only restaurant.
Oh, okay.
Everywhere I worked had always been a la carte. Yep. And listen, I remember being a young chef when I was choosing restaurants.
Yeah.
And I go back to when I was trying to pick between Picasso, Marque, and all that sort of stuff. I do remember I was more inclined to choose places that did a la carte.
Okay.
Purely only because, I don't know, listen, I could be wrong. I mean, listen, I am wrong because I'm working at a tasting menu only restaurant and it is quite different. But at the time, I thought those sort of places would be boring.
Oh, yeah.
And I really enjoy the sort of the chaos of service and like, you know, fucking having all these pans on and cooking and stuff like that.
It is very different.
So yeah, that's why I was sort of more, was always working in sort of those a la carte style restaurants. But Marque was the first restaurant that I worked at that was tasting menu only. Mm-hmm. Listen, it was a great experience. There was one chef, Jacob Davey, who was a sous chef there at the time. You know, we got along amazingly. Him and I now, like he's in Adelaide now. He's got his own place, Bird in Hand, which is fantastic. Mm-hmm. But we're still very, very close. You know, we talk all the time, and you know, I have much love for Jacob. But he made my time there awesome. But it was just good. Like going back to what I was saying, like just his way of thinking about food.
Yep.
You know, it was sort of the first place or first restaurant where I sort of saw fermentation.
Yeah.
There were two things that they were fermenting there. One of them, vividly remember because I thought it was fucking gross. Funnily enough, listen, that was because of my probably immature palate. Let's just say that. But he used to ferment field mushrooms.
Yeah.
In a big bucket with brine. He used to throw sourdough chunks in there, like as a bit of like culture, I guess, for the food. But I do remember trying the mushrooms, and I mean, listen, it wasn't really to my taste, and I didn't really like it. Mm-hmm. And there was also these fermented chickpea. It was like a fermented hummus they used to do for like one of the vegetarian dishes.
Yeah.
There was two things I remember that they used to ferment there. Again, first introduction to it, wasn't totally keen on it, but it was like a very new thing to me.
How times changed.
Yeah, massively. But it was just sort of, I guess what I really enjoyed about there was the structure.
Yeah.
That place was tiny. I don't know if you've ever seen what the Marque kitchen was like, but it was. We used to get deliveries in daily, but it was the first place I ever worked where, you know, you would order onions by the piece. You know, everywhere I worked, you'd always order like 2 or 3 kilos of onions and have like a tub of onions in the cool room. There, he's like, okay, I'm going to use 2 onions tomorrow. Then I'm just going to order 2 onions, just because the cool room was tiny. Like you'd have to walk in sideways, and it was. Listen,
tiny cool rooms.
It's amazing to think that what they used to produce in that kitchen.
Yeah.
Or the food they used to produce from that kitchen is crazy to think about. You know, and the food was like very ahead of its time. And I mean, it shows. You know, there were 3 hats for however long. You know, they were recognised in the world's 50 best list. So, you know, what they used to do there was incredible. Listen, unfortunately, I felt like I worked there in the tail end of the restaurant Marque's success. Obviously, they had their sort of heyday, their limelight in the world stage and in Australia. Listen, obviously, when I was still there, it was still a great restaurant, but I think, you know, it was a sort of tail end of what it was, and I probably wasn't there at its peak. Mm-hmm. But still, nevertheless, it was a great experience, and it was the first time I sort of got to sort of see, you know, when doing tasting menus, how to sort of think about your mise en place, or, you know, things to make the service easy, you know, coming away from a la minute cooking to sort of being a lot more organized and what you can sort of pre-do before service to make the food still impactful, but just a lot less strain on the kitchen in terms of what you have to do during service.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, I love the guy. So yeah, whenever you're working in and around Potts Point, you'll always see him, you know, just casually strolling around.
Oh, I love Marque. He's quite the character.
I love the guy. He's so funny. I mean, it's good. He's got his new restaurant now, which
quirky sense of humor.
Yeah, he's very funny.
But it's great. And I mean, every time I see him now and again, you know, we have a great chat. I feel like, you know, he's still a little bit a part of him. And Marque, if you're listening, like, you know, you're still a little bit pissed off that I didn't stay on at Marque, but I went off and, you know, helped my friend, which is, you know, to this day, even though it might not have been the right career choice or, like, you know, to advance my career, but I definitely stand by my choice of doing that. And, like, I'm glad I did, because, you know, me and my friend were still very tight like this, and, you know, it was a great experience, even though it wasn't, you know, the high-end restaurant. It was definitely a very playful experience. You know, it was. I'm trying to think what I can say without you know, giving away too much. But we had a lot of fun. Let's just put it that way. Like, you know, it was a restaurant and bar, so there was like a whole team of bar girls. You know, being young and single, there was, like, you know, a lot more people to interact with and mingle. I always used to go out, being in King's Cross, you know, you just sort of finish work and you'd have, this is before the lockouts as well, so you'd have all these options of places to go and party, and it was a fun, I think it was a year and a half maybe, can't remember how long I was there, but it was a fun time. And it was a great time, and it was just good to have a little bit of a break, you know, of doing fine dining, to step away and just, you know, not take food too seriously, even though, you know, we did sort of care about what we did, and we were pushing to sort of try to get a hat, I guess. But it just sort of was a much more relaxed environment, you know, and, you know, we just had fun with it.
Yeah, fair enough. It's interesting, because when I caught up with Jason Saxby, I remember one of the things that he said to me was, take what you do seriously, but don't take yourself too seriously. And that's kind of the easy way to break down how much you care about your job without being too much of yourself. Do you know what I mean? Like, don't be too egotistical about the work, but care about it, but just make sure that you're enjoying it at the same time. So I remember that being a very interesting part of that. So tell us a bit about kind of heading from the gazebo. What year is this? Where are we at now?
So this probably would have been maybe 2014, 15, I would say.
So we're coming close to Cirrus at this point.
No. Oh, yes. So essentially, my friend Jason, you know, we both walked away from gazebo because, you know, the owners wanted one thing, or they wanted to go in one direction, we wanted to go the other direction, so we both walked away. He started doing casual work at the Bentley.
Oh, cool.
And obviously I needed work as well, and he goes, oh man, listen, I can speak to Brent, have a chat, you know, get you some casual work as well. Spoke to Brent, and listen, Jace was still on his own trajectory to try to open his own restaurant. And I guess I was more on the trajectory of sort of wanting to find my next restaurant to work at.
Totally.
So I went and had a chat with Brent. I did a trial at the Bentley. I don't know, I can't remember the reasons why, but it wasn't for me. I didn't really like it. I mean, if you know the Bentley kitchen, it's a bit of a...
Started there for a bit,
It's a bit of a shit place to work in terms of the setup. You know, there's 3 flights of stairs to get downstairs.
Just for the pastry section, you know?
The dry store, you have to get an elevator down to the hotel to a different room. So I think, listen, obviously it's very challenging working in restaurants, but they had all these extra challenges which made the place a lot harder. And on top of that as well, going back to the point of, like, you know, wanting a more senior role, they didn't have anything for me other than a CDP. So I declined the job. And then in true Brent Savage fashion, you know, he's like, okay, well, you know, have you thought much about Yellow? I've got all these other restaurants, you know, do you want to come check out Yellow? And I was like, oh, at the time I didn't really, you know, didn't even think of Yellow as an option. But I thought, fuck it, you know, why not? I might go just check it out, spend a day there. You know, I've obviously seen some of the stuff Yellow was doing.
It has a nice quorum size.
Yeah, much bigger quorum size. And I think that was at the stage when they were doing their breakfast, which was like going gangbusters.
Yeah, the combo scrambled eggs.
Yeah, the big thick cut pork belly bacon.
Licorice bread, yeah.
Oh, the licorice bread, yeah. Memory has a nightmare about that. So it was, I mean, listen, I thought, fucking, what's the worst that can happen? I'll go check it out. I knew of Adam Wolfers, you know, obviously from his time at Monopole, and he went over to Yellow. And I mean, I spent a day in that kitchen, and I fucking surprisingly really enjoyed it, you know. And I wasn't expecting to enjoy it as much as I could. And I think what I did enjoy about it was the fact that it was a great mix of, you know, doing good, fine food, but not in a very fine dining sort of setting. You know, at the time it was one hat, and I always say this to people, and I felt like it didn't get the recognition it deserved. I don't think Wolfie got the recognition it deserved, because I thought, you know, some of the food they were doing was, you know, so tasty. It was one of those things as well, going back to the Viaggiante thing, you know, the way Wolfie thought about food. You know, he wasn't trained in that sort of classic Frenglish environment. So, you know, when it came to sort of making purees or sauces, you know, he thought about things in a much different way, which I really enjoyed, and I've sort of got off on, like, you know, sort of seeing the way he did things. Like one specific thing I remember, he used to make a smoked eel cream. And I never made a smoked eel cream in that sort of Frenglish style, but I mean, I feel like if you were to do it, it'd be like, I don't know, you'd make a smoked eel milk and then set it with agar, and then do like an agar sort of thing. But the way he did it, he was like, you'd buy silken tofu and then just literally blend silken tofu with a bit of eel meat and season it with a bit of soy, and the tofu will sort of bind everything, because it'd have like lecithin and all these emulsifiers in there, and you get this. Wow. And it was just this sort of pipable, delicious, and the tofu didn't really taste so much. Just this delicious eel puree, and I was like, I remember specifically seeing that and was like fuck, man, like how, I never in my mind I would have thought of to make an eel puree like that. With tofu especially. And just as the binding agent, and like, I don't know, just little things like that I really have taken away, and like just sort of, again, just makes you realize that there are so many other ways of doing things. Did you have to pass that cream after you listen, I'm sure you, I can't remember the specifics, but I'm sure you probably would have, But it sort of had the same texture as like I mean, if you know Gellan-based purees, like, you know, with very firm gel-like texture. Man, because it reminded me of, I used to have to make a smoked eel brandad ages ago, which is a bitch to pass because it was just fucking thick. I just don't know if it was like similar to that, or if it was like super silky. No, it was super. I mean, maybe we didn't pass it. I can't remember. Maybe. Sorry, Wolfers. No, I just can't. That's great. I can't remember, to be honest. But it just. It's like a cheeky hack. Yeah, and like, I guess like sauces as well. You know, I was always trained of the classic way of making sauces. You know, you make your veal stock, you make your double brown chicken stocks, all those. So you're making a pork sauce. You make a pork stock, reduce that down, season it with your classic pork flavors. So, you know, whether it be sage or, you know, depending on what sort of sauce you want to make, but, you know, you put your sage and anise. And then you sort of have your base stock, and then you're going to make your sauce. You caramelize all your pork trimmings, shallots, garlic, deglaze with wine, reduce that down. Add a bit of vinegar, reduce that down. Like, so there was this very fundamental and procedure-based, the way you used to make sauces. Then you'd add your pork stock, reduce that down, and then it would be a classic way of making your French sauces. And at Picasse, you know, when I was on the meat section, you know, you'd have pork sauce, lamb sauce, beef sauce, and then, you know, you'd have like a veal sauce, which was like a brown chicken. You'd have a jus gras. Like, you'd have 5 or 6 different sauces, and each sauce would use a different stock. So you were just like making stocks all the time and making sauces all the time. And that's why they call it sauce section, because you're making all these sauces and like all these classic old school French sauces, which take a lot of time. So all my sauce making was very classic. Where I was working at Yellow, you know, I saw a different way of making sauces. You know, whether one is better or wrong, or one is better than the other, I mean, it depends on the application. but it definitely opened up my mind to sort of see that, you can make sauces a different way. Like, I'm trying to think of specific sauces that I used to make. Like, I guess the Bentley, so the classic French way is all about reduction.
Yeah.
You try to get gelatin in the stock through your trotters or your chicken feet or whatever it is, and then you reduce it down and you get the viscosity through the gelatin.
Yeah.
Where when I was at Yellow, or the Bentley group, because I'm sure it was across the group, is, they would sort of get the sauce to the point of where you wanted it to taste. And obviously, without the gelatin, there wouldn't be the gelatin in there to sort of get it, so you'd get like quite a liquidy sauce, but then they'll thicken it with the xanthan.
Yeah.
Which, obviously Bentley had a bit of ref for like fucking overusing xanthan, which, I mean, whatever. But, they would use xanthan to thicken their sauces.
Yeah.
And it's still something I use to this day. Listen, obviously I don't do it to that extent, but I do thicken sauces that, you can't sort of achieve that consistency through reduction. So you sort of use xanthan, and it just sort of really, made me realize that, not everything has to be reduced to a heavy, sticky glaze. And it definitely lightens the food as well.
Yeah.
Those sort of thick reductions can get quite heavy.
Yeah.
And they were always monteed with butter, which sort of like, although delicious on its own, it can be quite rich. And I do feel like a style of sauce like that has its purpose. Like, we actually do a classic French style sauce now with our beef here. But it's not always the case. In the past I have done xanthan style sauces.
It's a cheeky hack, whether it's cornstarch or xanthan or something. It's like, you can't always just fucking reduce something down till it's thick.
No.
It's just like,
and I guess
especially if you're in the shit too.
And I guess the problem is, well, like, it's one of those things that can be easily overused.
Yeah.
So you just got to keep yourself in line sometimes and just realize, maybe just a bit of fucking xanthan to help like thicken this or like smooth out this, well, not smooth out, because it's great for smoothing out purees, particularly purees like onion or vegetables like onion and fennel, which don't necessarily puree as well as like a cauliflower or a celiac. They're great at sort of emulsifying and binding. So it definitely has its place and purpose in kitchens, but it can easily also be overused.
I definitely heard that EMP, when they came to Aria, were using a lot of xanthan.
You can just tell like by the sauce on the thing. I mean, they're so shiny and glossy, and they're like real. I guess the body of the sauce is quite light in color. So you're like, man, there's no way you're going to teach that thickness or viscosity in that sort of color.
So tell us about the kind of moving around the Bentley group then. So you're obviously at Yellow, which was, to be honest, like my experience of Yellow, it's surprised. Like, I didn't expect this when I walked in there, but I really understood the fundamental of just building flavor blocks at Yellow, which I don't think I learnt as much of in other places. Especially, like, I was there when it was, vegetarian. At least I don't think it was vegetarian when you were there.
It transitioned to vegetarian while I was there.
Okay, while you were there, okay. Yeah, so like, when you're kind of removing, I mean, you still would have had butter and stuff like that, but the moment, especially a transition to vegan when I was there, so vegetarian to vegan, so moving out the butters, the fucking creams and shit, so it's like, now you have to get really creative on how to create fat, how to create kind of that like moorishness, the cream, that kind of density, without the animal products or the, even things like honey, they might give it that nice caramel sweetness. So it's really interesting. So you had to really think outside the box. That would have had to have been the case when you were there at Yellow.
Definitely. And I guess like one of the things that sort of really opened my eyes when I was first there was, this is across the board of the Bentley group, but the amount of Japanese seasonings that they had there. Listen, other than like seeing bits and bobs, I mean, obviously Marque, they used quite a bit of white soy and a few sort of umami-based ingredients like seaweeds and stuff like that, but it wasn't to the extent of what the Bentley group was. I mean, they had like a whole dry store from June Pacific of like, kombu extracts, your dashi seasonings, your different types of soy, your mirins, all that sort of stuff. So to me, that was a real eye-opening experience. So I really, really enjoy that, and I guess it really made me see the value in using those sort of products in terms of obtaining deliciousness in food. And I guess that sort of, pinpoints the reason why when I ate at Yellow, I was like, why the fuck is everything so delicious here? Working there, I sort of understood why. But then, even when we transitioned into vegetarian, like, I mean, it was a great tool that we continued to implement because, you just can't obtain that same sort of meatiness and umami from vegetables, but when you use a sheet of kombu, it sort of just creates this sort of savouriness and deliciousness that sort of you can't really achieve from not using animal products. But it just sort of really, I guess that was a moment in my career that really made me, I guess that sort of had led me to sort of where I am now with all the ferments and using all the Koji-based seasonings.
Totally.
That was definitely the sort of place that sort of opened up my eyes to it.
Yeah, so the combination of Marque and kind of Bentley Group helped fuse that kind of fermentation and Japanese kind of
100%. Even though at the time I didn't know it,
Yeah.
But it really sort of made me appreciate those sort of ingredients.
Yeah.
Then I sort of moved from there. I was there for a year and a half. The bit of background, so I was meant to take over as head chef at Yellow. Unfortunately, Wolfie was supposed to move to another restaurant that was being opened by the Bentley Group, and I was going to take over as head chef at Yellow. Unfortunately, things sort of didn't happen. I mean, well, I say unfortunately, but probably fortunately, because it sort of led me to where I was today. So Wolfie ended up staying on, and then I was like, okay, well, if there's no head chef position here, I'm sort of ready to start doing my own thing.
Sure.
And then, was going to go look for my own thing. So, again, Brent fashion. Brent's always been...
He's so good. He's very good.
Yeah. Tones, I know you want to move on, that's all well and good, but, we're opening Cirrus. I know you love all the fucking hype and the adrenaline of a new restaurant.
You know where he gets it from, Yeah.
He goes, come down to Cirrus, help us out, you'll be a strong asset for the first 8 weeks. Get the things going, help put systems in place. And then, you can finish up and venture on there. And I was like, okay, you know what? And again, I loved the whole idea of being in the shit and like new restaurant openings just because it's all so chaotic.
Totally.
So I went over to Cirrus, and Alex Munoz was the head chef at the time. Obviously under Aidan Stevens, who was the sort of group chef.
Yeah.
I was meant to be there for 8 weeks. I think after 5 or 6 weeks, Munoz, for whatever reasons, I can't remember. I think he had a blow up with Nick during one service. I was like, fuck this, I'm out of here. Listen, man, I'm sure he had his reasons. For whatever reason, I mean, I don't really care because it fucking gave me the opportunity. So thank you, Munoz. Essentially, Munoz walked out. Well, he didn't walk out. He finished up.
Yeah.
And it happened very swiftly. He didn't do any time period. Obviously, he spoke with Brent, and Brent was like, if you want to finish now, just finish. And then that happened on like a Friday or something like that. And then come the following week, Brent spoke to me and he goes, do you want this opportunity or this position? And I'm like, I mean, obviously I was quite nervous by it, but I was like, sure, let's do it. I'm ready. So the following week I was the head chef, and it just sort of happened like that. I was not anticipating that whatsoever. It was very much one of those scenarios, right time, right place. But I was 30 years old. Leading up to that point, I had been offered a few head chef positions at different restaurants, and I felt like, one, it wasn't the right position, and two, I didn't feel ready. I think one thing that a lot of chefs nowadays do is, take senior roles too early in their career. I wanted to be a chef de partie for as long as I could, or, and a sous chef, and do my time and get to learn those roles. So I was 30 years old, and I felt like it was definitely time to sort of take on a new challenge. So I took on the role as head chef there. And I mean, it was very daunting at first, because, you don't train to be a head chef. You don't train to be creative. I did a few, when Yellow transitioned into becoming vegetarian, I did have a little bit of input on the menu. I did come up with a few dishes which made the menu, which was fantastic. It was the first time ever I was like, had my say on the menu, which is such a nice, rewarding thing. But then going to step into Cirrus and then having to look after the whole menu was quite a daunting experience. But the Bentley Group was great because there was a lot of support systems in place. We had obviously Aidan, who was a group chef, I was working quite closely with. Had Brent, we worked quite closely with, even though he was sort of not entirely there the day-to-day running of the kitchen. He sort of helped out with service. When it came to sort of creating dishes, he would sort of mentor and like, you know, sort of give me his opinion. And, you know, at first it was quite I guess it was quite hard to sort of come up with the dishes and then sort of implement them on the menu. But by my final stage there, or like my end of the three years, like it just sort of became like clockwork, and it was, you know, so easy to change 4 or 5 dishes at once, you know. And it's a very, very different experience to sort of what happens here in terms of changing dishes, which I'm sure we'll probably get into later. But it was great. And like, I guess again, going to where I am now, you know, Cirrus was a great experience. It was very busy, especially at the start. You know, we were doing 200 plus services at a sort of 2-hat level. I think the biggest service there was maybe in 260, 270, but the weekends were massive. And, you know, there were two big sittings. It was just like such a adrenaline-fueled service because it was just so busy. And I loved it, man, like calling the pass and plating and just like screaming out dockets. It was it was really good. It was a fun experience, you know. And looking at it, being creative, the creative side of things as well, after working at Yellow and then being under the Bentley blanket, it really made me appreciate and use all those sort of umami-based seasons. So everything I was doing, or everything creative, or every dish I created, would have some element of like, you know, a dashi. I was calling them umami boosters. Some element of a dashi extract or like white soy. And, you know, it was great at the first. I was like, oh, fuck it, this puree tastes delicious, or, you know, this sauce is amazing, or this bit of fish is so good with this garnish because of that, or whatever the reasons be. But there was a small part of me which did feel like it was a little bit of a cheat sort of thing to use up all these ingredients, like, you know. And not only that, I did feel like you did fall back on it quite a lot, especially towards the end part of me being there. Like, you know, you'd taste the sauce and you're like, oh, it needs something, or it's just not as delicious as it should be, and you always just end up falling back on the fucking white soy. Or your combi extract, And the thing is when you do that, I do feel like as an overall menu, everything sort of has this cohesive, sort of familiar flavor profile, which I sort of did not sort of like. And I guess that sort of made me realize that, you know, when I go to do my own thing, I needed to be a bit more smarter about the way I sort of used those seasonings and not to overuse them. Because at the time, I mean, listen, I was sold on umami. I was sold on, like, and this,
very convincing.
It's like, it's delicious. Like, you'd be stupid not to sort of want to impart any of that into your food, because like, you know, it's, even though it's a naturally occurring thing, it's sort of, if you can add more to the dish to make it delicious, why not? And, you know, people who dine at the restaurant are not going to taste something and like, oh, well, there's white soy in that. They'll just be like, fuck, that's delicious. So I knew that when I moved to and did my own thing, that I needed just to be a bit more smarter about the way I sort of used those sort of products. Then so I guess I was at Cirrus for about 3.5 years. This is actually during lockdown. So I was there for 3.5 years, and I knew that I wanted to go do my own thing. It was my time to sort of leave. I think I'd resigned in 2019 towards the end of the year. I said to Brent that, like, you know, I wanted to move on. He was sort of super supportive. He knew that I sort of did my time. He goes, but I gave him like a decent amount of notice. I listen, I'm not ready to leave yet, but I'm just giving you my tentative notice, just to give you time to sort of to fill the role.
Sure.
So obviously I was still at Cirrus, and COVID happened, you know, and COVID happened, and unfortunately it sort of pushed my departure date to then and there. So, like, you know, I was a bit gutted, but I mean, it was out of obviously their control, but, you know, it went from working one day to restaurants are closed, and I'd finished up and I didn't get to have my like farewell. And, you know, I was at the Bentley Group for over 5 years, and like, you know, for it to end like that was a bit of a shit thing, but, you know, it was obviously out of their control. And listen, I'm sure there are a lot more people out there who had far worse experiences in terms of COVID, interfering or, disrupting their life. So listen, it was annoying, but, I got over it pretty quick.
Yeah, yeah.
So I finished up finished up at Cirrus. It was COVID. You couldn't work. So I thoroughly enjoyed that time. And listen, I was working pretty hard at Cirrus. Again, going back to my sort of work ethic, I was working 5 days there. All the chefs were doing 4 doubles, but I, by choice, decided to do 5 doubles just because, as my first head chef role, I wanted to be there as much as I can. I had something to prove, so I wanted to be there as much as I could. So I just worked the 5 doubles. So, I was still averaging easily 80 hours a week. And, for a 30 to 32-year-old working like that, I feel like it's a bit uncommon. You push on like that when you're younger, but to do that when you're sort of older, is a bit of a hard thing. So I guess when it came to COVID and I could just relax and sleep, man, I loved it, man. Like, I guess a lot of people were sort of, full of anxiety about what was going on, what's going to do next. But man, I really enjoyed that lockdown time.
Yeah.
And I'm sure a lot of people did as well. Like, especially for a chef or for restaurants in general, like it's always just go 24 hours. You need something like that to disrupt the world, to be able to like step back and, just look at what you're doing. And there was so much positive change that came out of that in terms of the way that restaurants operated. And like, I think work-life balance was one of the biggest things that sort of came out of COVID when restaurants reopened. There was sort of the hours were a lot more friendly on the chefs. The staff mentality and the staff kitchen culture and all that was definitely looked at. But yeah, I think it's great what COVID did to sort of restaurants. I think it was a lot for the positive.
I'm curious. I just want to, with Cirrus being your first time head chef, what were some of the important lessons I think you took out of that growth period for those 3 years there?
I guess, I almost hate saying this because it's a bit cringy, but I was quite hot-headed back then. And I'm sure any of the chefs who worked with me, especially early on, probably would agree with that. I had a bit of a temper. I was quite angry, and I guess not to justify it, but working in those sort of other kitchen environments, which was quite normal. That sort of really instilled to the way I was sort of running the kitchen. But as time got on, I sort of realised that one, I didn't really want to be like that, even though it sort of was really hard to sort of not be like that. And staff retention was quite hard because obviously, you're going to start yelling and screaming at those new people who are starting. They're not going to stay. And, we struggled with chefs quite a bit there. Listen, I don't think it was purely because of me or the restaurant. I think it was just a general consensus of hospitality. I know a lot of restaurants were struggling to find and maintain good chefs. But I think, just definitely the way I sort of conducted myself as a leader is one thing I sort of really sort of took away from there and sort of reflected coming into somewhere like Sixpenny. And just, managing staff was one thing that I sort of really never expected. And again, it's, you don't learn how to be creative in your early years. You don't learn how to manage staff or become a manager or a leader. You got so many different personalities in the kitchen. And you have to, especially at Cirrus, we're quite multicultural as well. So there's a huge range of different people, and you're sort of trying to balance everything. It was quite difficult, especially when you're sort of so new to it, But it was great. It was an eye-opening experience, but it was challenging. But it definitely enjoyed my time there.
So this kind of brings us now towards the lockdown and where we are now, right? So I know obviously, like Cura started before Sixpenny, right?
Correct,
so this idea of Cura. Tell us a bit, obviously now lockdown is kind of making you reflect on what it is that you like, what you love. Tell us about, I guess, getting that started and how that's kind of grown now in side by side with Sixpenny. Because one of the first locations was in the old Clare Hotel, was that?
Correct.
That's so like it's. Tell us about that.
So
Tell us about getting
okay,
started.
so essentially it's lockdown.
Yeah.
I didn't really have a job. Actually, I was working part-time at the fish butchery. I had my friend Paul Farag, who was running the place, and I just needed some casual work to bring a bit in the cash.
Yeah.
So I was working casually there. And at the time, obviously during lockdown, a lot of people had free time.
Yep.
And again, we had sort of used Koji at Cirrus.
Yep.
But it was very basic. We used to buy in the dried inoculated grains. I think it was a bit in trend then. Like Koji was coming in a bit more popular, like people using shea Koji. So we'd get in the dried grains. All we would ever do is just make shea Koji with it and then use it to like marinate meats or like add to a puree. So it was a very, at the time, I didn't realize the versatility of Koji. I just thought that was the sort of only applications. And, you know, I guess reflecting on my time away from Cirrus, going back to what I was saying where, you know, I really wanted to be smart about how I use those sort of seasonings, the white soys and all that sort of stuff. So I was trying to think of ways of, you know, I guess I was on the trajectory of trying to open my own restaurant. I was trying to think of ways I could sort of get there. And, you know, it's a very daunting thought process to like start from scratch. Like, how am I going to get from this point to the moon, basically?
Totally,
is how it feels. So I just started small, and I guess the original thing that I really wanted to knuckle down and figure out was the concept. Because I feel like in Australia, or in Sydney in particular, like to stand out, you really have to have your own identity and own concept. And I did not want to do my own restaurant and just do what the Bentley Group were doing. Totally. Which is a very hard thing for a young chef to do, especially when you've been working there for 5 years, to go out and like really have your own identity is like, you know, almost a little bit unheard of. So I really wanted to make sure that I did not do a carbon copy of what I was doing there. And I really wanted to make sure that I was using these umami-based seasonings, but did not want to just sort of fall into the trap of just using those pre-bought ones. So I was just reading online about Koji artists. I can't remember. I think I might have bought the Guide to Fermentation. I was reading about the book. I was like, fuck, you know, I've got all this free time. Why not sort of dabble and start trying to make my own Koji? Not really thinking about it like, yeah, this is where I'm going to head. Just sort of like, oh, you know, play around with it. I've got the time, might as well do it. So read the Noma book, figured out how to build my little chamber at home. Made it from a little esky that I had. Bought some shit off Amazon and then created this sort of like little chamber in like a esky that I had. And it's quite profound the first time you grow Koji, because it's like, again, because you've been instilled from a young age that, you know, that mold is bad. Like, you know, fermenting is like all these sort of off products is bad. And it's just, you see this Koji and you smell it and you're like just fucking so amazed by like, wow, I cultivated, I grew this, and it was just like a sort of very rewarding experience. And that was the first step. And then, okay, I've got Koji now, what do I do with it? Decided to sort of start making my own misos, and like, I guess I made a few basic misos, a few basic garums at home. And then when I first tasted it, I also made a few basic shea Kojis, and I guess the flavor profile of a shea Koji that you've made from your own wild grown, or not wild grown, but your own cultivated Koji compared to a shea Koji that you made from inoculated grains. Listen, I don't know if we weren't making it properly at Cirrus, but the difference between the stuff we were making at Cirrus to the stuff that I made from cultivated grains was like miles apart. And I remember tasting it, I was like fucking so amazed by the nuances of it. It was sweet, acidic, full of umami, and it had like all these floral notes, where the one from Cirrus was just this sort of very salty dominated umami based sludge that I felt like was great for marinating and like having all these proactive enzymes that break down meats, but in terms of the flavor profile was not anywhere near what I tasted at home. That was just a shea Koji, but then all the misos that I made was like, and I guess you couldn't really buy unfermented misos back then either. Well, I mean, I'm sure you probably could, but they were a lot harder to come by. Sorry, not unfermented, unpasteurized misos. And just, again, a miso that you made from home that was a live, living thing, this tasted so different to the store-bought misos. You know, it was a lot more sweeter, it had a lot more character, a lot more like sort of different sort of aspects of what you sort of would not get from a store-bought miso, because the store-bought miso is pretty one-dimensional. I thought, it's just sort of umami, a little bit of sweetness, and that's it. Where this one just sort of had all these sort of like elegant little different touches, which sort of made me think like, fuck man, it's so amazing what I can do from this, which is someone who's completely new to it all. Like I thought, like, what are the possibilities of going down this path? And it was a bit of I know it's cliche, but it was like a light bulb moment where I thought, okay, fuck, well, this is it. I'm gonna do a restaurant, and I'm just gonna purely focus all my energy on making all these sort of fermented seasonings. Because I mean, listen, obviously Noma were doing it.
Yeah.
And they were leading the frontier of doing it. Like obviously, Momofuku was sort of quite heavy on it, and I'm sure there were plenty of other restaurants that were sort of doing it. But I don't think anyone in Sydney at the time was sort of driving that force. I'm sure that there were places using Koji and places making their own miso, but I don't think there was anyone cultivating all their own Koji, growing on different grains, buying different Koji spores, and diving as deep to it as I was. And I was like, this is going to be my thing. So that was it. I had my idea, I had my concept. I'm like, okay, sweet. I've gone from here to here, even though I still got to go all the way down there. But like, it was a small step. I mean, with these sort of things, you're going to make small steps. And that's like my partner was always like, you can't think of it as from here to here because that's super daunting. But you just got to make small goals and just achieve small goals daily.
Yeah.
So I had the concept and I was like, sweet, what do I do now? I was still experimenting at home, and I guess it got to the point where I was quite limited to what I could do at home. Purely the fact that I was steaming rice in a little rice cooker, in a little bamboo steamer. My chamber I could only produce like 500 grams to a kilo of Koji at a time. Our spare room, who was also my partner's workspace, because she was able to work from home during the lockdown. That's where I was growing the Koji, and I had all the ferments, and like she fucking got really upset by the smell that I was producing. I mean, to me, I was like, what are you talking about? This is delicious. I love this smell. But for her, like obviously it got quite full on.
Yeah.
Let's just say it that way. So I needed to find a space where I could continue to do this, and it wasn't in my home at home. So she was doing marketing for the Old Claire.
Oh, great.
And then this opportunity came on. She sort of got me in touch with Timo, who used to be the GM of the venue.
Yeah.
Essentially, I don't know if you know the Old Claire quite well, but the way it used to operate, it was a hotel that had a bar attached, and they had the hotel rooms. But all the food offering used to be done by the other restaurants which were attached to the building but not necessarily attached to the hotel.
Like Automata or something?
Exactly. There was Automata, there was, I think there was Pollen Street, one of the social places, which then turned into Bazaari. And listen, I mean, I'm sure if you speak to Clayton, I felt like they didn't really want to do that sort of shit.
Yeah.
Which is fair enough, man. They got their restaurants to worry about. And so essentially, even though the hotel had its own little kitchen space downstairs, it was not used. It used to be a prep kitchen for Pollen, the Social Street restaurant, or whatever it was called. But then I got into chatting with Timo, and essentially we struck up a deal where I went in, I started a food program, I guess, offering food from the hotel done from a hotel kitchen. It was very basic. Your classic hotel offerings with those burgers, snitty, steak, quite elevated. Obviously, from my background, I didn't want to serve shit. We were making our own sauces, but I did it I did realize as well that I didn't have the support of a two-hat restaurant, so I was quite limited to what I could do there. But the deal was that I would do that, and in return, I get to use their commercial kitchen. I get to use the kitchen space.
Yeah, great.
I get to develop my ideas. I get to work on things there. I had all the storage space. I had big combi ovens where I could steam the grains. I was able to buy a new incubating chamber where I could produce 10 kilos of Koji at a time. So, and not only that, I was experimenting with a lot of different ingredients. It's became a lot more experimental rather than making your basic misos with chickpea and soybeans and rice. I was making them with dried tomatoes or black garlic or black pudding. That's when I sort of started to become like
Crazy
quite
shit.
adventurous with it, because I was doing it on the work money. So if something was fucked and like went in the bin, like I didn't really care. So,
Yeah.
but it was really good. It was really quite eye opening. And then it was at that stage where I realized, okay, so I guess the idea was to sort of train myself on how to make those things. That was the idea of working there. And then when I was working there, I sort of had the idea of like, okay, the point of getting to the restaurant is still quite some distance away.
Yeah.
I was looking at sort of doing some pop-ups with restaurants around town to sort of like start building a bit of brand.
Yep.
And that's sort of where Cura Seasonings was born. I was like, okay, well, what I might do these. Listen, the restaurant name was already decided. Obviously, it's like the first thing a chef does is choose the restaurant name up here when it should be fucking all the way down there. But you know, it's going to be called Cura Dining. So Cura Seasonings was born in the fact that I was like, okay, well, I'm going to do these pop-ups as Cura Seasonings, and then like sort of use these seasonings, because I was using them a little bit at the Old Claire, but I felt like it was a bit of a waste because, I mean, listen, I put a bit of beef garum in the steak sauce there. Like, I mean, I don't feel like the customers would have appreciated it, and it's like it was a bit of a waste of time. So I didn't really do too much there, and I really wanted to sort of implement them in sort of some of the dishes that I was creating.
Totally.
So I decided to basically start Cura Seasonings. And what Cura Seasonings was like a range of, at the time when I first started, it was four different types of seasonings. It was 2 pastes, a salt, and a shea Koji. And essentially the idea was to sort of build brand awareness, start getting my name out there. Listen, it never really was intentional to be a business. It was more so to sort of just have things that I could sort of give away, sell. You know, if I do a pop-up, have my 4 jars there to sort of say, you know, this is what I'm doing. And I guess, you know, that you couldn't really buy those sort of things. You know, no one was really making their own types of misos. I mean, there were a few companies or producers making miso, but they were just making your stock standard chickpea, soybean as adventurous as they got. So that was the idea behind it. And, you know, Cura Seasonings was born. It was never really intended to be the business of what it is today. But it got to the point where, you know, I was at the Old Claire for about a year, and I only ever wanted to do a year there. And I was pretty fed up with it. Listen, as you can imagine, I'm not a hotel chef. Doing the room service, doing all the canapé functions on the rooftop, and like, you know, it's pretty soul destroying doing fucking snitty and chips, you know. It really is, or like deep frying wings, or whatever it is. So like,
no one cares.
I knew that I really wanted to get out of there. Again, getting out of there with no real intention of what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
But my focus was like, okay, listen, I just need to get out, find some work elsewhere, which I feel like would have been pretty easy, because by that stage restaurants were reopening, and you know, we'd come out of that second big lockdown. And, you know, there was a lot of opportunity to work in places. So I was like, I'll get a job fine. I'm not too worried about that. But then I'll just sort of focus on doing the pop-ups and the Cura Seasonings and stuff like that. And it's funny how the world works, because I was like, I really wanted to resign, but I was a bit hesitant because, you know, financially, I couldn't really afford to not be earning a salary on a week-to-week basis. So I was hesitant on doing it, and then I received a message from Dan Puskas on Instagram saying, "Hey mate, looking for a head chef. You know, I feel like you might be a good fit for the restaurant. If you're interested, let me know. We can have a chat." And funnily enough, listen, I always consult my partner with these sort of things, and we had a fight. We were arguing. I'd wrote back to Dan. I was going to say no. I go, "Listen, thank you very much.
Wow.
Listen, I'm on the trajectory of trying to own my own restaurant." Because in my mind, I thought that he would have wanted me to come here, do what Sixpenny was already doing, and I was already too far invested of where I was, and I did not want to like walk away from what I was doing. And even though it was a very enticing opportunity, I was like, reading the message, and I was like, going to respectfully decline the position. But then obviously later, I didn't send it. I was just going to sit on it. I spoke to my partner about it, obviously when we'd made up. She's like, "What the fuck are you doing, you idiot? Like, just at least have the chat." So I got rid of the message, sat down with him, had a chat, and it was like a very, obviously I'm so glad I did, because, you know, we actually sat down on, I think it was that table down there, I can't quite remember. But I told him pretty much where I was at. And, you know, I'm on this sort of path. I really want to open my own restaurant. You know, I've got all these seasonings that I've sort of created, and I really want to sort of like pursue this. And I think it's fantastic. And he obviously, you know, he knows about it, but he didn't really, hasn't tasted anything like it before. So I said, listen, why don't you come down to the Old Clare? I'll put on a tasting of what I've sort of got. And like, you know, I had a spread of 20 different sort of ferments. He came down, he tasted everything and was like just sort of so impressed of all these sort of flavors that you sort of produced through Koji. And like, I don't know, I guess the rest was sort of history, man. Like, he was super excited for me to come to Sixpenny and implement all these sort of ferments. And I was super excited because it almost felt like to me, even though it wasn't my own restaurant, I had gone from this point of an idea to having a concept and then just sort of massively fucking jumped towards the moon because I was given this restaurant pretty much, and like he was happy for me to bring my concept alive here. And, you know, even though I had to, you know, still create dishes and still do things within the Sixpenny ethos, which I was completely fine with because I felt like with the ferments that I'm doing, you know, you don't want to overcomplicate the plate with too many different flavors and too many different ingredients. So, you know, simplicity is a key, and that was Sixpenny has always been about. So for me, the transition was quite easy. Well, listen, I'm not gonna say easy was the right word. It was quite a smooth transition in terms of implementing the ferments. And the great thing is I was at the Old Clare for that amount of time, and I had already done all my failures there. I had done all my experimenting. I had some ferments that I could sort of bring with me. So when I came on board, it wasn't like, okay, I'm here, I'm going to start making things, and in 10 months' time, I can start putting things on the menu. I was pretty much ready to go.
Yeah, right.
Listen, it was great, and you know, Dan and I got along really well. You know, the relationship between us, Evan, like obviously Evan till now, like, you know, he's been super transparent. You know, we speak our mind when we need to be. We get along like very well. So it was great, and like it just was one of those sort of things. Even though it wasn't my restaurant, I think I, you know, put up a pros and cons sort of list, and just Sixpenny is just way too good to turn down. Like, it's an offer way too good to turn down. And, you know, looking back at it, I don't think there would have been any other restaurant opportunity that I would have taken. I feel like I would have declined it, but the fact that it was Sixpenny, you know, this is like a Goldilocks restaurant that most chefs sort of dream to have, like tasting menu only, 30 covers, you know, you close 2 days a week, dinner services only, don't turn tables. Like, it just ticked all the right boxes. So like, yeah, it would have been stupid for me to turn this opportunity down.
It is kind of cool how opportunities like that work out in a strange way. It's happened to me so many times where you really have this goal or this vision, and you don't necessarily get what it is that you wanted, but you get what you needed in some other form.
Exactly.
You know, like I remember after Yellow, I went and did pop-ups myself, and I was doing like 6-seater, 9 courses for Roots Dining was my kind of concept. And I had this like long-term dream, wanted to open up this like 10-seater situation, right? Yeah. And then it was like, I don't know, 8 months or something down the track. And that's when maybe Sammy did the same thing, where they were like, oh, do you want to come and head chef, you know, do menu work for whatever, maybe Frank and sort of more for the group, but just base yourself for maybe Sammy, you know? And it was fun because they've got like a little chef's table, 4 seats there. I never did a chef's table experience, but it was the first time that people went to maybe Sammy, were at the door and go, oh, can I actually sit at the chef's and not the bar? And that started to annoy the bartenders because they were like, oh, why are they coming for this? You know what I mean? Yeah. Because like, it was such a good way to like show, because I started to do like cool food. I was actually talking to the guests, really making them comfortable, making chefs martinis. So it was kind of like its own experience sitting there as opposed to the bar, where you go to the bar and it's these bubbles and dancing and it's fun. But when you got to connect with people who really enjoyed little bar food and snacks, they're like, oh, I actually really enjoy sitting with the chef. And that was fun, you know? So like, that was my kind of similar example where it was like, oh, I never thought I'd be here, but I'm grateful that I was given the opportunity because it sorted a problem.
I know. I've had a few people say to me, it was like, oh, you know, that's such great timing, right time, right place sort of thing. And I was like, Yeah, I think, yes, it obviously was great timing with the fact that, Aaron had moved on.
Yep.
And Dan was looking for a head chef and I was on the market, so to speak. But
Yep.
I guess leading up to that point, doing the fermenting at home and then sort of taking the job at the Old Claire to sort of train myself on how to make all these things. I sort of created that opportunity, I guess. And, there's been a lot of times in my career where I've had, bad luck, looking back at the Yellow situation where I was promised this sort of head chef position, but then things didn't work out. So it was the right time at the right place, but also I felt like I created that luck for myself. Mm-hmm. And, I guess I was fortunate enough to have this sort of clear concept of what I wanted to do, because I felt like if I didn't have my concept of what I wanted to do and come to Sixpenny, I feel like Sixpenny would still probably be what it was 5 years ago, 6 years ago. And the food, I'm sure things would have evolved and progressed, but I do feel like I've definitely brought on my own identity to this restaurant, even though, again, it's not mine, but there's a very obvious sort of connotation with me being in charge of the food in the kitchen here, because
but which is a good thing, right?
Of course, it's what I wanted,
Yeah, I'd like to be honest. When you hear about a new chef taking over a restaurant, the one thing you look forward to is how they're going to impart their knowledge and their experience. Why would you tell the world you got a new head chef and you go there and the same thing?
It was a very daunting experience at the start, because obviously, listen, you got to take into consideration I finished up at Cirrus at the start of 2020, and I didn't start here until the end of 21.
So there's a good chunk.
There was a 2-year gap of me not being in kitchens. So to go from Cirrus, doing a bit of work at the fish butchery, and then fucking doing fish and chips and schnitzels at the Old Claire, to come into a well-established 3-hat restaurant.
Sure.
I feel like there would have been a lot of eyes and a pressure on terms of what I was going to do here. So it was quite an anxious sort of time for me. But again, Dan was very supportive.
Cool.
He was just like, man, I want everything to be super organic and smooth. Don't just come into the kitchen. Don't feel like you have to change anything soon.
Yeah.
Just come in, do the services, learn how things operate. And it was a very smooth transition. I feel like it was probably, maybe 1 or maybe 2 or 3 months before I changed the first dish, or even I don't even think I changed the dish. It was more so just changing the way we did something in the dish, or
Fully.
Instead of seasoning that sauce with salt, I had more a garum that I used, and we just seasoned with that. Just so it was very small changes like that.
Fully.
And then as things progressed, obviously when we first started coming up with dishes, I guess there was a lot of collaborative work between myself and Dan, in terms of the fact that I'd have an idea, we would workshop on it together. We'd talk about it, and Dan is always very supportive in terms of the fact that he doesn't really think there's anything such as bad idea. Well, listen, man, I'm sure there is bad ideas, but even if he thinks it's a bad idea, he still would let you figure that out for yourself.
Yeah.
So we'd talk about something, would go. I would work on the dish, work on it for maybe however long, and then I'd go plate it for Dan, and he would always have constructive feedback.
Uh-huh.
And I guess the thing that I really struggled with at the start was probably sort of visually trying to make the food look good, because at Cirrus you would always have 4 or 5 different components on the plate, where I feel like when you've got 4 or 5 different components, you can sort of the plating style can be a bit more sort of frantic and organic, but here, the things need to be a lot more precise and a lot more aesthetically easier to look at, and not overworked. So I really struggled with that at the start. But obviously as time goes on, I think, I like to think that, I'm in a lot more of a comfortable place now.
Yeah. I'm curious, since when you started to now, how do you feel as though you've grown, and how you've then seen Sixpenny kind of grow from those, and if there are any kind of...
Yeah, listen, I mean, going back to sort of what I was like at the start of Cirrus, I was very hot-headed and, felt like I had something to prove. My mentality of that has, I like to think, is sort of tamed down. Listen, don't get me wrong, I do get upset every now and again in the kitchen here at Sixpenny. But obviously, you know, I guess there's a lot more thought behind it in terms of the fact that, you know, at Cirrus, I'd give someone fucking bollocking, tell them why they're shit, and that was it.
Yeah.
Where here, like, you know, the bollocking would happen, but then after service, you'd talk to him and go, listen, for whatever reason, you used to explain the reason why you lost your temper, and explain the reason, you know, that we have a certain level of stand, and it's doing it in a sort of more constructive way where, you know, if you give someone a bollock, I don't think they sort of really learn. Where if you talk to them about it after service and say, like, you know, obviously it's the adrenaline or the rush of service is over, so people can sort of really sort of take on what you're sort of saying, explain the reason why you did it, and, you know, really want to instill, and what I sort of try to do here is like instill my passion for the food that goes out to the guests, that I really want those chefs to have that same sort of level of passion.
Yeah.
I don't want them to, you know, do things a certain way because they're scared of getting in trouble.
Yeah.
I want them to do that because they want the guests to have the best experience possible. You know, if they make a puree that's too salty or like too loose or whatever, I don't want them to think, oh yeah, this is gonna slide, and then come to service like it fucking goes to the table. I want them to be like, no, this puree is too loose, or this puree is too salty, it's not gonna taste as good, or like I added too much garlic, it's whatever the reason may be. I want them to be like, no, it's not right. It's not the dish that Tony intends it to be. So obviously it's not the right, you know, experience for the guest.
Sure.
So I really try to instill that here and make them think that it's not about, oh, you do things because you're going to get in trouble, but do it because, you know, you want the customer
fully
to have the best experience possible.
Yeah.
But, you know, that was obviously the one thing that I learned is like, yeah, obviously how I sort of manage the team. The other thing as well is my expectations of the creative process. At Cirrus, you know, we had a much larger menu. You know, we used to have, I can't remember, but there was at least, you know, 20 to 30 items on the menu, ranging from desserts, snacky items, vegetarian dishes, stuff off the grill, whole lobsters. Anyway, the changing dishes there was like a much different experience. Like I'd always sort of change 4 or 5 dishes at once, and it was always a very quick process, I guess. You know, it was a lot more seasonal. Like, you know, if I was going to change things, I'm like, okay, what's in season right now? The dishes would change a lot more frequently, but it'd always be like 4 or 5 dishes at once. And, you know, from the moment I started thinking about what the dishes were going to be to the end product of me sitting down with Brent and having a tasting, you know, normally, I'd say 2 to 3 weeks. It was always like quite a simple process. And it's because, listen, you know what's going to work with what, right?
Yeah.
So you got lamb with peas and asparagus, right? And a lamb sauce, a bit of fried cavallonero. You know that garnish is going to work. So like that dish is set. It's just a matter of how am I going to cook the lamb, what cut I'm going to use, and how am I going to present it. They're the sort of things that you sort of want to think about. Where with here at Sixpenny, it's always only one dish change at a time. Listen, I might be working on multiple things working on multiple ideas at once, but I would only ever change one dish at a time, just because, you know, obviously you change more than one thing, it's like quite a strain on the kitchen. Things get quite stressful. And not only that, things, you know, as much as you sort of practice or like rehearse it, things still do go wrong during service. But the main thing that I got to tell myself is that the process is a lot longer and slower. Listen, sometimes I'm lucky. I'll come up with an idea, and within 2 to 4 weeks, it's on the menu. Other times, it can take upwards of 3 months to sort of come from an idea to a finished dish that's sort of I'm happy with to put on the menu.
Yeah.
And listen, the main reason for that is obviously, I guess I nitpick a lot of things. So, like, you know, I'll be coming up with a dish and I'm like, all right, just say for example, I mean, I'll use a previous dish as an example. It was like a beef dish that had this roasted artichoke, Jerusalem artichoke puree that was seasoned with a smoked chestnut miso. I reckon I made that puree at least 6 or 7 different ways.
Yeah.
I mean, when I say different ways, I mean the base of the puree, the ingredients that went in there, still very similar, but just changing the ratios, or like, you know, this. I feel like the puree is a little bit too rich with this garnish, so I reduced the dairy.
Yeah.
Or it needs more acidity, so I added white wine and reduced it at the start. Like all these little small things at the start.
Let me guess, did you finish it with silk and tofu?
Oh, no. Unfortunately not, no.
Imagine that, you're like, fucking ANTold.
That would have been a good idea, shit. So I guess the thing that people don't realise as well is like the finished dish, they might just see it as a simple beef with puree and a sauce, but they don't realise that, and I made that puree fucking 7 different ways, and that sauce 6 different ways. And like one thing that I took away with from Brent when I worked at the Bentley Group is he'd always ask me when we were doing the tastings, he would like, you try it as well with me, we'll taste it together, and he would, you know, say yep, offer his advice. But I asked him, I was like, you know, what makes you say this? Like, where does this come from? Just so I can sort of get in your head and understand how I can sort of be like you.
Right.
And he goes, whenever I taste a dish, and it's something that I still do to this day, he goes, I always ask myself, what am I looking for when I eat this? So, you know, you're eating this dish and like, okay, obviously your palate, you eat a lot. So I feel like I like to think of my palate as, you know, a bit more advanced than the sort of average person. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, yeah, this is really nice, but does it need more acidity? Mm-hmm. You know, it's served with a bit of rich beef. I feel like the beef is a bit too, you know, rich. Am I going to induce more acidity through the puree, or am I going to induce more acidity through the sauce? And I test all these things. That's why it takes so long to get to that point, is because I test different ways, and I don't know what the best way is. And so, you know, you ask yourself these questions: does it need more fat? Does it need more richness? Does it need more salt? Do you need to take something away? Does it need more texture? All these sort of questions you start asking yourself. And, you know, I guess that sort of really has guided me to sort of how I sort of create dishes. Because everything I create, I always sort of ask myself, what does it need? Mm-hmm. And more so now, particularly now, is like, what can I take away? Mm-hmm. What's unnecessary in the dish?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's always like, it's a long process. And I think one thing that I've sort of realised, because at the start, when I first started creating dishes, and like, you know, something would take 2 months to get on the menu, I was all this sort of self-doubt. I was like, fuck man, I'm pretty shit. Why is it taking me so long to get this dish onto the menu? And like, particularly coming from Cirrus, where it was 5 dishes like that, so here one dish takes 2-3 months. So I guess sort of, accepting that that's the way it is, and like, you know, I would always sit down, listen, man, I'm sorry it's taking so long. He goes, man, like, don't worry, like, you get in this like real calm. So I want things to be organic. I want things to be natural. So don't like force it. Just, if the dish isn't ready to change, don't change it. Like, don't have this sort of inbuilt pressure in yourself that things need to change like so frequently. Which is sort of what I'm at now. And like, you know, if I don't think the dish is ready, or I'm not 100% happy with it, it doesn't really go on the menu. Mm-hmm. Listen, there are exceptions. Sometimes I feel like the dish is at 95% of the way there. I'm like, listen, it needs to go on the menu because I just can't keep trialing some other shit I need to work on. And then that last 5% happens when it's on the menu. You know, you make small, minute changes here and there. Listen, you're happy with how it goes out, but you can sort of make small tweaks, whether it's, you know, a small dash of this into the puree, or you take something like the bones of the dish is there. Just a matter of making small tweaks. And like, I still do that to this day. Like, you know, there are, for example, we've got a bundo that we sort of have on the menu that we serve at the moment. Mm-hmm. And it's been on the menu now for probably, I'd say, at least four months. And you know, I keep revisiting that bundo. I'm like, listen, it's nice. It's great. I feel like we can sort of change the glaze, or rework this, or rework we do it. And just making small tweaks here and there to sort of always get better at it. I think one of the things that chef that can make, or the mistakes that chefs can make, particularly in these sort of fine dining restaurants, is to come up with a dish, put it on the menu, and be like, okay, that's done. You know, and not revisit it. I every so often like to try a dish after it's been on the menu for like 3-4 months, because just like Chinese whispers, man, little small changes happen every now and again, and then before you know it, you taste something and it just tastes different to how it originally was. And like when these changes happen so gradually, you don't ever notice it happening until you sort of like eat the dish as a whole. So every now and again, I like to try the menu and just make sure that things are still the same as when they originally went on.
It is funny, hey? I do have to say, it's not really something that you think to do
and
when
like,
you create menus. It's like, does it still taste the same in 2 months? It's like, you don't often think, I should really be tasting this. You like not that I've prepped it, but just to make sure that it is still the same.
Yeah, and plus, like, you know, your mind, your chef mind's always like operating and running. And like, even though you've come up with this dish 6 months ago and you used to, you know, cook the beef in a certain way.
Yeah.
In 6 months' time, you might just have an idea that you never thought of back then of like, hey, this actually might be a better way to do it. Or like, you know, this puree that we're making can benefit from this addition or this seasoning. And like, you know, you always constantly need to be evolving, and you always need to be thinking about what's on the current menu and not just sort of say, okay, that's on the menu, it's done. Because things can always be better.
Totally.
Things can always be better. This whole
I tell myself that all the time.
This whole idea of perfection, I mean, listen, it's just fucking like the moon, mate. It's just hard. You're never really gonna, you're gonna do your best to get as close as you can to it, but like, I don't think it's a real thing.
Yeah. No one's ever got 19 and a half, huh? Or 20 out of 20?
20 out of 20 in the guy, like, it's not a, you know, is that a thing? Like, who knows?
That's the stars, my friend. We'll learn to get to the moon. Okay, great. Well, look, I just want to finish up on a couple of good kind of broad questions that might revisit a lot of what we've talked about, right? And they're very reflective, but I want them to be more or less kind of lessons that maybe you could teach others.
Yeah.
One question would definitely be, if you were to look at your whole career, we've just kind of glossed over, right? What would be 2 or 3 important lessons you've taken throughout your career that you found really useful, or that you remind yourself now where you are?
Okay.
It's a very deep question, but...
Yeah, I guess first and foremost, you know, becoming a great chef requires time. You know, I think you know, it's a craft, and you really need to sort of like invest your time into the craft as much as you can. Listen, I know we're in a new wave of like, you know, not wanting people to work over 40, 45 hours, which is obviously fantastic. But, you know, would I be where I am today if I didn't work 80 hours back in those kitchen environments? I mean, who knows? But I do really think that, you know, you need to do more than what's required in those 40 hours. You know, not necessarily you have to be at work and work for free, but, you know, go read some books, go eat out at different restaurants, do some online research. Now, you've got fucking Google, you can research anything nowadays. You know, you really need to sort of put in more effort than what you're sort of currently doing at work if you want to succeed. You know, go take a part-time job at a bakery, learn how to do bread, go work at a butcher shop. Like, there's so many things that you can do that can sort of benefit your career outside of your work. And listen, I feel like you have to do it. You have to. And it's not just our industry. Like, you look at any other sort of industry, like, I mean, I don't know, an example, like lawyers. So I'm sure they work more than their 40 hours a week. If you want to succeed and be at the top, you just need to do in the time and put the effort. So one is, put your head down and just fucking work and like take on the knowledge. Work for chefs that you really want to learn from is another important thing. You know, choose a chef that you really admire, and don't just go work there for a year. Work there for 3-4 years and take as much as you can from that place. Work all the sections. You know, learn what that head chef does that you like, learn what that head chef does that you don't like, and just take as much information as you can. I really think people should enjoy their chef de partie years for as long as possible, because as soon as you get out of the chef de partie world and you start doing more managing, you know, you lose that joy of cooking. I fucking miss, and I would love nothing more to come in one day and just fucking do the section here and not worry about any sort of creative stuff, and just sort of come in and do my job, go home and like just focus on your section, man. I would love to do that, but obviously I can't. And, you know, Dan wouldn't pay me when I'm paid to fucking do a section. But it's just sort of, you you need to enjoy it while you can, and don't rush it. You know, again, we spoke about it earlier. There's a lot of chefs who take that sous chef job too early, or like I get resumes of people who are like apprentices. They go from apprentice to a chef de partie. 2 years later, they're a fucking sous chef. I'm like, man, you're not a sous chef. You're not a sous chef. I don't give a fuck how good you are. You're not a sous chef. Like there are things that you need to learn through time and experience in the business, and like you can't do that in 3-4 years. So do your time. You know, there are exceptions of people climbing the ladder early and, you know, becoming young head chefs at a young age and doing really well. Like Brett Graham was fucking in his mid to late 20s when he started the library. I was
going to say Hugh Allen as well.
And Hugh Allen, yeah.
Yeah.
He's like, what, 20... I can't remember.
I think it was 23 or 24.
23, yeah.
When he was head chef at Vitamont?
Yeah.
Yeah, still very young.
I know.
Very young.
Which is unheard of, and it does happen. And listen, I mean, obviously they're very talented chefs.
Yeah.
But it doesn't happen very often.
Yeah.
So do your time. Another thing I would say, reflective on myself, if I was to go back in time, is that I would say you need to put yourself out there. You know, all these sort of young chef competitions. You know, obviously Young Chef of the Year, Electrolux, you know, Time Out, I know did a few ones, even like the TAFE, the TAFE Nestle Awards, all these sort of little things that you can do to sort of start building yourself a profile. I would recommend doing it. Even if you don't get through, even if you don't win, you're still starting to put yourself out there with the food media. Even if you do win, perfect bonus. It's just a sort of way to sort of start getting people to know who you are. Because I felt like I started Cirrus, when I was the head chef at Cirrus, no one really fucking knew who I was. Listen, for whatever reasons, I don't know if it was more so the fact that I was a bit macho, hot-headed, coming from those sort of style of restaurants, to be like, oh, I'm not going to fucking do those competitions because, like, you know, only losers do that, whatever it may be, or come from a point of self-doubt and, you know, scared to put myself out there.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't really know the reason why. I mean, probably a combination of both. But you really needed to sort of do it for many reasons. And obviously the main one being the fact that you sort of get to sort of know the food media. And two, you sort of put yourself in this uncomfortable position of where you're creating dishes and, you know, you're experimenting and like you're putting yourself on a plate for people to judge. And the sooner you can sort of start doing that, it'd be a lot better to do that rather than jumping into a head chef role and not being able to do that, not having any experience with that and being so like...
Yeah, get it all out of the way. Young.
Overwhelming at the start.
Yeah. And it's good to like really put yourself in uncomfortable positions when you're CDP. Like just learn all the things you don't know how to do, make all the mistakes, just put yourself in different positions. Like you said, work all sections, like do all that shit young, because when you're a head chef, people expect that you know what you're doing. And you can't fake that shit, you know? Especially cooking. You cannot fake being a good chef. People can fucking see it and they can taste it.
They can taste it, yeah.
They can taste it. It's no bullshit, you know? That's what I love about it. You can just spot a shit chef from a mile away.
Yeah.
It's hard to fake. You know, there's only so much you can talk your way through it, but when you watch how someone works, how messy they are, how they communicate, you're like, you have no clue what you're fucking doing. No clue. And it's so obvious to us anyway. Yeah. Maybe not to everyone else, but it's like so obvious to us. But yeah, it's very interesting. It's very interesting. All right, I'm going to finish up with this one here, my friend. So this is a little tradition at ANTold. Yes. We have a nice little deck of ominous cards here. And we write...
Bit nervous now.
Yeah, no stress, my friend. Yeah. Cheeky magic trick. Anyway, so we've got these ANTold cards. They all have different questions on them.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm just going to fan these out. You're going to pick one, and you're going to answer.
Okay.
All right, no pressure.
No pressure.
And this wasn't on the list of questions. All right, all yours, my friend. Pick a card, any card. Read it out and give it an answer.
One place that changed you.
Great question.
Listen, I'm probably going to go back to the first place that changed me, I guess, which I'll say is probably Bacchus. Purely the fact that it really opened up my idea of what a fine dining restaurant can be. Listen, obviously, it was of its time, and you know, I guess a style of restaurant like that wouldn't operate nowadays. But it really sort of instilled work a strong work ethic, a very sort of idea of how or what a fine dining restaurant should be, and like the standards that a fine dining restaurant should withstand. Because yeah, it was just a very hard experience, but also very rewarding. You know, it was hard for a young person like myself to sort of to do that, and you know, walk away from that proud and say, you know, I worked there for I think it was like 2.5 years, which I feel like in Bacchus years is a fucking eternity, because the flow over of chefs was so high. But it definitely shaped who I am today. You know, it really sort of inbuilt or embedded my love and passion for high-end restaurants. And I guess it was at that point where I really wanted to sort of continue working in kitchens that were, I guess, challenging. I always wanted to be challenged. You know, it needed to be quite, what's the word, like, quite busy in terms of the fact that, you know, there needed to like a lot of commotion, and like service needed to be like hectic and full on. I needed that to sort of keep me engaged. Yep. Like, I don't think I could have worked in a Sixpenny style kitchen when I was in my early 20s. And just the fact of like what was achievable in terms of like, there's no way that you can produce this sort of food in this style of kitchen, because the quorum, it's funny to think about I don't know if you ever ate at a Bacchus, but it was just like one long pass with a tiny fucking quorum, and like everyone worked side by side like this, and the quorum was always a fucking bomb site. Just because it was so small and just what we were trying to produce from that kitchen, like we were definitely maxed out, and it just sort of really showed me that anything is possible if you sort of like determined enough to do it.
Very good. I like it. Well, that concludes the little chat, my friend. I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much.
There's so much to digest. It was very good.